night my son was born, I thought of words written by the poet William Wordsworth. The child is father to the man. Though I hadn't read the poem at the time, the line is a famous one and it had reached my ears by one way or another. They're striking words, of course, so they were never too far away from my pool of contemplations, and that night, for obvious reasons, they rose from the depths of that pool and looked me in the eye. Taken out of its context, I interpreted the line to refer to the rejuvenating effects of new life on the aging. Then, in my mid-20s, just as I thought I had a clear understanding of a country of rotten systems, just as the world-weary cynicism and disillusionment of post-teen angst were commandeering my vision, just as I realized I'd never see a sunrise through young eyes again or tremble before a first kiss, this wonder who had just so recently inhaled his first breath, this creature brimming with possibility and squirming in my arms, set flooding into my heart the waters of hope and love, the waters of life. Because of him, I was suddenly closer to another human being, my wife, than I ever imagined possible. And through him, over the coming months and years, I would see the world with new eyes. Through him, the world looked again to me like a bouncing room of miracles. The world was reborn. I was reborn. As we exchanged visions, learning the world in equal measure from one another, walking side by side, I strived to be the man that he deserved to have walking beside him. And in so doing, the child had made of me a man. Not the embittered crust of a man I was becoming, but the man as I thought I should be, the man that I needed to be. In the calm wake of that first night's maelstrom, as my wife rested after her ordeal, and I sung my son to sleep with the ABCs for the first time, I scribbled out lyrics a friend of this show, Ron Muga, would one day sing. You brought me to myself. You brought me to myself. This weekend, some 15 years after that life-changing moment, I finally read William Wordsworth's poem. I think less of it now than I have all these years. What Wordsworth was getting at, I know now, had more to do with looking inside, hanging on to your inner child self to help you see the world perpetually anew, than finding that ability from without. I was disappointed after reading it, but I soon realized that in a loose way my errant interpretation wasn't entirely off the mark. Seeing the world through my son's eyes, after all, helped remind me of what it was like to see it for the first time through my own as a child. And so whether it's at the level of the poet's self, my hospital bed familial microcosm, or the cultural socio-economic mess of America, as seen in Penelope Spheeris' 1984 film Suburbia, the heart of the matter is that humankind needs its youth to show it the error of its ways, to heal itself. Indeed, we need the violence of rebirth in order to survive, to be brought to ourselves. And violence is a good place to start in Suburbia. Set in early 1980s Southern California, the film is a slice-of-life look at a group of teenage misfits who have banded together in an abandoned suburban home. The kids form a commune of sorts, using the aesthetics of punk as their tribal markings. Donned in leather jackets, combat boots, ripped jeans, and mohawks, the outcasts sleep on floors in the blue light of inane television shows and horrific newscasts, perform acts of civil disobedience in public, rip off garage freezers for their daily bread, attend raucous punk concerts at the local club where they fight rival tribes, and constantly fend off the misdirected attacks of the so-called pillars of the community. They called their tribe TR, which stands for the rejected, and, as the rejects of society, their presence throws into sharp relief the hypocrisy, small-mindedness, and downright ugliness of that society, of the American dream turned sour in Suburbia. The film shares and possibly has inspired the narrative construction of Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, that is, a hot box of community conflict that escalates in intensity to inevitable combustion. In the end, no one wins. There's no clear right or wrong, but the point is driven home, and Spheeris' film here, quite literally. This is a Roger Corman production, and as such it bears the hallmarks. It's poorly produced, scripted, directed, and acted. Acted, by the way, by a cast of unknowns, with the wonderful exception of Flea, pre-Red Hot Chili Peppers, who at one point shoves a rat into his mouth. But shortcomings notwithstanding, the picture is also incredibly infectious and endearing. There's no doubt that Spheeris has a deep love for these kids and their angst. In fact, the film could be faulted for being a bit overly sympathetic to the kids. They seemingly do little wrong, but are always attacked for no good reason. But in the end, it's her genuine affection and earnestness for her subject matter that has made this film a cult classic, and rightfully so. I'd recommend it without reservation to anyone who can deal with films outside the mainstream, especially anyone with any affinity for punk culture. Spheris takes an earnest look at that punk culture as a natural reaction to the failures and hypocrisies of the previous generation. In their parents, these kids witnessed the spiritualism and love of the 60s turn into materialism and hateful divorce in the space of a breath. Their parents' idealism was drowned in drug addiction, booze, while the TV continued to rattle off Brady Bunch inanities and game shows as if everything was just A-OK. Hippies, once self-empowered and anti-authority, transformed overnight like werewolves into yuppies and conformists. The lies of Nixon produced the conservatism of Reagan, signaling to these kids that the only progression of the country seemed to be from bad to worse. What hope did these kids have at happy and meaningful lives if their parents had so miserably failed? If their parents had once despised what they had now become? It's only natural living under such a dark cloud to curl your lip into a sneer, stick up both middle fingers, and do the only thing your parents failed at, but at which you could succeed: drop out. Spheris has a deep understanding of all this, and likely from first-hand experience of being one such rebel. Rebellion, of course, takes many forms. The punk cultural rebellion of the 70s and 80s is possibly the loudest of them, and probably the most colorful. But it's of course just one in a long line of counterculture rebellions in America that can be traced to pre-America actually, and the libertinism of Great Britain in the 17th century. From there, the lineage is long and wondrous, and includes flapper, greaser, nudist, naturalist, beatnik, hippie, surfer, trekkie, metalhead, wastoid, glam rock, goth, skate culture, gangsta, hip-hop, steampunk, comic book, geek, and God knows how many others I'm leaving out. Some of these countercultures come furnished with an ideology. Most, though, are pure cultural reaction, socio-knee-jerks, and have their ideologies tacked on only after the fact, by those who need to intellectualize, or after the culture has grown up and has perspective on itself. Almost all of the countercultures have an art form as its mode of expression, an outlet for its frustration, and all of them, without exception, by definition, are rebukes, conscious or not, of the preceding generation and the respective prevailing moral and aesthetic consensus of the middle-aged and system brokers. In other words, if it ain't pissing guys like me off, then it ain't working. Our ire, our disappointment, and frustration, that's part of the healing process of humanity. Humanity sheds its skin like a snake, and that's us, the middle-aged, the old skin in need of shedding. We might not like it, but we have to deal with it. It may be our job to point out the good things that kids aren't seeing, what they're shedding, what they're leaving behind, but it's their jobs to point our way to the future with the middle finger to the new skin by showing us what we got wrong. Spheris' film is an endearing and sympathetic expression of the pain involved in that process. It's helped me realize, just now actually, that I made a weirdo movie about this very subject matter in my short film Beat Cycle, a kind of nightmare look at the sort of painful changing of the guard process of generations. It's what I see on the micro-familial level going on in my house as my 15-year-old son now mounts his own private punk rebellion movement against me. That is, my son gloriously replacing me, killing me off, shedding me like an old skin from the flesh of my family line. He might not have blue hair or a bone nose ring, but it's no coincidence that his great passions as a teenager lie in running track and playing classical music, the only sport I have no experience with, and the only music that doesn't regularly pop up on our iTunes shuffle. It's clear to me too, as painful as it may be to accept, in ways impossible to articulate here, he's becoming a better man than I am, and can ever hope to be. And as I look outside my house for what might be the emerging counterculture at large now, the counterpart to Spheris' suburban punks of the early 80s, I wonder at what I see. Maybe the new skin is something that's still so far underground that it hasn't shown up on my radar yet. Or maybe, like the rednecks in Spheris' film, it's simply the thing that most pisses me off, the thing that frustrates and disappoints me the most, the thing that I think is just as ugly as hell. It's not a giant leap then to see that today's counterculture just might have something to do with selfies and Instagram, and what I can only understand from this outmoded viewpoint as self-absorption. Sure, maybe I'd like it to be something more like hard rock or punk or skate or hippie. And hey, maybe the town can start a school of rock, like all those other Gen Xers like me are programming in other towns, and then... But wait, hold the phone. It doesn't mean a damn what I'd like it to be, what I think would be good counterculture for these kids, because if it were, If it were something sanctioned by guys like me, then it'd cease to be counterculture at all. Hell, if I don't like it, if it makes me feel like a used skin, if I think it's ugly, it damn sure means it's punk. And to that I say, oi.
Good job, Joe.
Nice.
Joe, by the way, took up 15 minutes of our half-hour segment for this.
My mic was on mute, but I was cheering all the way through that. I was like screaming, yeah, especially that list of all your counterculture list was awesome.
Got a little carried away this morning.
Badass.
You don't think Anthony's going to come home wearing a leather jacket with a TR display painted on?
I don't think that's in his cards, actually. But it is actually amazing. Right? Just to see the ways and the ingenuity of a young person carving out his individuality, and it just, you can't predict it, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Well, at least, he is carving out his individuality, Yeah, it's got to be amazing. What's with punk rocks and rednecks, Joe?
I don't know. They seem to be like Hatfields and McCoys.
Yeah.
They're at each other's throats all the time.
Hey, Billy, didn't we take a pop shot at rednecks on our very first episode of the show?
Very first ever. There was a fair cross section of America you insulted all in one fell swoop.
Is that true?
Michael Madsen and rednecks to start with. I think.
Yeah, like all within the first hour, I had found a way to insult.
Jinx.
Yeah, fair enough, man. I like this movie, Joe. I really do. It's sloppy. It's punk, really. I mean, if you think about it, it's got an attitude behind it. If anything, out of the three movies, we did CBGB last week, and we're doing SLC Punk in a little while. If anything, this at least gets some emotion out of you. This one.
Yeah, it feels pretty authentic.
Yeah, good word. Yes, there's an authenticity to it.
Yeah, it feels like she definitely has got that spirit, that punk spirit.
Well, yeah, I mean, she does. I mean, she's a really interesting lady. She did the right before this. She did the Decline of the Western Civilization, which is.
I remember watching that as a kid that was more about metal, right?
Well, no, that's the second one she did. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a few of them. There's a few of the Decline series, and
that's right. The second one was the one me and my friends.
The second one's really funny. It's really funny because she not only talks to like members of Kiss and other big heavy metal outfits. She concentrates on a couple of like dudes that are just like fucking just living in fantasy world, like these really bad glam rock bands that are just going nowhere, and they live at home. And it's just like, dude, get a fucking grip, man. And she showcases these people well, and she really we talked about Larry Clark a few weeks ago. She likes working with the youth, and I mean, she does it a lot differently than Clark does. But she seems to gather a lot of trust from these kids, and they wind up putting together a punk movie that's has a great cult status. Big thanks to Roger Corman, Joe, right, for helping her out.
Yeah, he seems to be right there. He's always got some influential film or filmmaker cooking in his little pot there.
Like, does the bad filmmaking, Joe, does that do you like when you're watching this in the first 10 minutes, it's just like, I mean, it's a horrible scene, but it's just like, it's just so ridiculous looking too.
Yeah, it's difficult. It was difficult. The first few minutes to me were like, oh boy, here we go. And
then, my love for children. I love little kids. They're very important to me, mostly because I've had such a terrible upbringing. So whenever I'm out in public or at my job,
that first scene.
I tend to always try to be positive and influence like children in the best way that I can. So I have a heart, and I'm watching this, and I have a terrible fear of dogs because I was attacked by a dog when I was just 2 years old. I mean, it's really one of my first memories is being attacked viciously by a fucking dog. And
That's a horrible memory.
yes, it's
You have a fear of dogs to this day?
oh, it doesn't matter how lovely or cute they might be, Adam. I am terrified.
Oh, you're terrified of my dog when you walk in here?
I'm not excited about it, Joe. No.
Wow, dude. Now, what have you? All right, this is a whole different subject that I don't want to get off track here. Max is here. If Max was here, listen, he would take this to a whole different place.
It would end.
But I got to know, have you done anything about this to try to overcome the PTSD, the whatever you want to call it, the fear of dogs?
What should I do? Get a dog? You know, what can I do? I have nightmares still. You know, I mean,
really?
Yeah, it's rough.
It's just dogs are such wonderful creatures, and for you not to be able to have a healthy relationship with a dog, man, you're missing out on something.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to. Whatever time
it's so funny. I remember one time I texted you, Tom. I was like, I was out on a walk with my dog. I was like, Tom, what would be good for you is to get a dog.
Seriously, it's cognitive behavioral therapy, man. It's exposure therapy. Just get a wonderful, sweet, loving, adorable dog.
Well, Adam, if you recommended, maybe one day I will do something like that.
That sounds very dismissive. We're going to have to take this up at another time.
Yeah, we'll talk about it some other time. Yeah, definitely. But anyway, that scene is just like, I mean, right away, Spiris is getting a lot of emotion out of me, so I immediately, because of that scene, I was zoned in, I connected.
Oh, is that right? See, it had the opposite effect because it was so obviously a doll. It was so obviously a doll in the mouth of that doll.
You didn't think that stuffed doll was convincing?
I was so terrified I had my eyes closed.
I had just come home from a 3-year-old's birthday party. So I was sitting on the floor playing with, building blocks and all this stuff, surrounded by 5 or 6 little kids, and then I come home and the first thing I see is a dog tearing a little kid to pieces. I was just like, Jesus Christ, man.
That's horrible.
But yeah, you got to watch it again, Tom. You got to put it on replay to get over this trauma.
I hear you. My personal trauma over.
I think so.
Okay, over the dog factor you're talking.
Yes, I think so.
It'll be like Alex in Clockwork Orange,
just over and over again.
Just go hang out in your local pound for hours at a time.
Oh my God, I still have these odd nightmares where I get shredded up by these things, man. The fucking saliva coming out of the mouth, the tongue hanging out, Oh my God, it's just awful. And the funny thing is about it is that my mother swears that I was infatuated with this dog next door to us, and she's all I wanted to do was go. Joe, it's real fun because it's just perfect Tom Detloff stuff. I just wanted to go over there and be friendly and pet it, and then fucking attack me. Right out of the gate. That's like how my life starts.
Most dogs aren't. I mean, Tom, you should come to terms with that.
I hear you. I could deal with my mother's dogs. I can't go to her house because they're too active. If your dog, I think, is more of a loafer, right?
Yeah,
she's a loafer. What kind of dogs does your mom have, Tom?
She has the dog that's in the Wizard of Oz. The terrier.
That dog died a very long time ago. That was filmed in 1939.
No, the type of dog that was in the Wizard of Oz, wise guy.
Are you telling me that a little terrier, a little harmless terrier, is too active?
Even worse. They're even worse for me. Those things are even worse because they're so active. Those.
Tom is 12 feet tall too. This is like a mouse and an elephant.
It doesn't make sense, right?
He's just climbing up on chairs, squealing.
Listen, if you were attacked by a dog, it makes sense. But I mean, at some point, it's time to make peace with this and find a way to get past it. Because dogs is all I'm saying.
Yeah,
dogs.
Max really gets disappointed because his love for dogs. I mean, geez,
of course.
But whenever I'm very dismissive about his love for dogs, he doesn't appreciate it at all. He won't even understand that I was attacked viciously by one. He doesn't care.
Listen, I get that, but you got to understand that I feel like the domestication of the dog is humankind's greatest achievement to date. Period. So I have a close relationship with dogs, and I feel like you're missing out on something without being able to experience that. So
Adam, you have no idea how much I'm missing out on.
Well, I mean, especially for companionship. If they're such great company, man.
So basically, you're just saying Detloff Just get a fucking dog, because nothing, you're never gonna meet a woman.
Well, let me put it in perspective for you, Tom. If it ain't a dog, it's a cat. All right. So
no, cats are terrible. That's terrible. I'm not a big fan of pet. Like the worst is oh god, when I walk into a house and see a caged bird, that really irritates me beyond.
It irritates you.
Yeah, because what kind of a controlling narcissist would cage something up that's born to fly and put it in their house for their own personal,
All right, I get that.
Yeah, that's just like whenever you walk into a house and there's a caged bird there, whoever's in charge of that home is a fucking dysfunctional despot.
Despot. Yeah, I'm sitting in a room right now with 3 cages.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
How do you feel about rodents? I got 3 rats within 12.
Oh, speaking of rodents, Joe, you brought up that flea in this.
Oh my god!
What the fuck? Oh my god! How disgusting was that?
I had no idea that Flea was an actor before the Red Hot Chili Peppers thing, and I was like, 10 minutes, 15 minutes in,
it completely changed how I mean, I knew he did the acting very young, and especially early on with the Peppers. I always just thought it was because he was in the Peppers, and
that's what I thought.
People like Catherine Bigelow dug him. Some kid would cast him in the movie. He was in Back to the Future too, and
Big Lebowski.
Later on he's in the Big Lebowski, but he was in big
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Yeah, but he was in he was in big movies, early on, like Point Break. He's in, he does. He's really good on screen sometimes too, and he's good. And he's fun to watch in this movie. He's got a great presence. But Joe, my point is that it totally changed how I thought of him as a bassist in
Right.
Chili Peppers, knowing that he was an actor first, and then just kind of lucky.
He's just a performer, I guess. They're an LA-based band, right? So
everyone is in a movie at some point.
They're absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
I saw them maybe, I think during their Mother's Milk, before they really hit it big with Blood Sugar Sex Magic. I saw them. I was like maybe 16, I think. And it was just, it was a whirlwind of entertainment. It was just nuts. They
Tom, that was the first concert I ever went to.
The Red Hot Chili
at 15 years old, they opened for the Sparks.
Wow.
And but yeah, first concert, Greek theater out here in Los Angeles.
It's amazing how sometimes you could catch really an amazing. Like I saw the Beastie Boys and Fire Hose opened up for them, Adam.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So sometimes you could really luck out. My first concert ever when I was 13, I saw Billy Idol, and the Cult opened up.
Nice.
So that's so every once in a while you could, another good one. Here's a really wild one, because if you think about popularity and how one band became more popular than the other, I saw Fishbone one time and Primus opened up.
That's a great concert right there.
Yeah, that was really nuts, man. The funny thing about Primus was it's just 3 of them, and they were like 100, and Fishbone's like a 10-piece band, and they're like loud enough. Like, it's Fishbone is one of the most wacky. Like, if you ever get a chance, if you've never seen them, if they come to LA or they come to New York, Billy, this is a band that is so worth seeing. It's amazing what they do up on stage with all the instruments, and their music is just so well put together. But Primus was so fucking loud. It was just 3 fucking people. And it was like, I remember walking in, they were already playing when I walked in. I was just like, holy fucking shit, what's going on up here? And it's just like 3 freaking skinny dudes from Texas. You know what I'm saying? It was something. Oh, so many great shows. And, watching these movies and like experiencing, the scenes and the music, and it just brought so many great memories back at them. It really did for me.
Nice.
So many, yeah. Oh,
I think the concert scenes in Suburbia are
awesome.
great.
Yeah,
it was like, it shows you the difference between a person, like going back to CBGB. Like those concert scenes are so phony and canned and everything, and then you watch Suburbia and you're like, yeah, that's I've been to those shows. I know what that's like. Like you can just feel the energy is completely different.
Especially those like local those local gatherings. I've been to a
Yeah.
few of them, like I said, in New Brunswick and a few other places where, you're not really seeing anybody that's really hit it big, or probably will never, ever, ever, ever in a million years hit it big. And it's just, like 30 to 50 people just hanging out and enjoying music.
That place we were just at recently in New Orleans, Billy, remember? Like 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning,
the
whatever.
headbangers?
Yeah, that death metal.
Yeah, but
shit,
Billy,
man,
weren't you
freaking
in awe of that or something?
I love that shit. I mean, I when I was like I don't have any concert stories whatsoever, but it was like in my early 20s I used to just go to the hardcore clubs in San Diego, and it was usually just the back room of a bar, or I mean it was the most like shabby places, like wherever they could get it. And yeah, it was just like 30 to 40 people and bands no one, I mean, maybe some of them made it big and became famous. I have no idea, but it was more just to go there and get drunk and just thrash around for a while. So
San Diego, Adam, Black Flag is aren't they from San Diego? If I'm correct, I think they're a San Diego band. Yeah, I mean they had a whole scene out there, man.
It was kind of it's kind of funny because the punk scene in America has gone around. There's like different variations of it. Like New York in the 70s was obviously shitty, right? Like it was just a hellhole. But then there's like this secondary wave of kids from sort of nice areas that are supposed to be nice, like suburbia, like Los Angeles, but it's quietly shitty, like it's shitty in a different way. And that was kind of the San Diego scene for sure.
Yeah, man. Ugh.
But the Suburbia, man, the thing that I liked about this too was that, Joe, you kind of mentioned that they treat the punks a little too nicely in this movie, but compared to the other ones, I think it does a better job of not of just sort of being a little bit more honest about them. Like when they, when that one guy like tears that girl's clothes off, and then they're thrashing people's cars for no apparent reason, and there's an undercurrent of racism there. Like, a lot of the, I mean, she at least has, she's at least virtuous enough in her filmmaking to show that they're not super articulate geniuses rebelling against some massive, modern conspiracy of consumerism and all this shit. They're just confused, inarticulate kids thrashing out, And
that's a great point, because I was thinking about that.
It's truer, they're not, they're racist, they're stupid, they're angry, they're nice, they're kind, they stick together, like
they're just learning from each other.
They're just figuring shit out, So definitely. I thought it was, she did a better job painting a portrait of what kids are actually like, and where the reason comes from that something like punk comes to exist.
It's certainly not as cartoonish as the other two films by far.
It's Corman cartoonish. It's like exploitation cartoonish, right? But that gets at the guts of a thing. Like that kind of exploitation filmmaking gets at the guts of something. Like it's cartoonish for the right reasons and in the right ways. It's not trying to whitewash the reputation of something.
It doesn't have an agenda where like CBGB.
Well, its agenda is to piss you off a little bit, to like get under your skin, or to force you to see something unpleasant and have sympathy for it.
Yeah, it just seemed to like the sentiment, the intent was more aligned with the subject matter, in the sense where the other movie was more like a historical sort of survey in CBGB, and then this other one was more like kind of like a 90s hipster type of heady kind of, more of like it actually was like a Hollywood movie more than anything else.